and this Hangout on Air is live, live, June 1st, 2016. Be safe out there, double exclamation point. I'm Ron Motter, host of Planeta.com, and here with good friends all around talking about safety and security in the United States. And passing it off to Deborah. Deborah, can you share quickly what is Local Travel USA?
Local Travel USA is an attempt to connect people in the United States that are doing great things as far as responsible travel. They may be doing things overseas as well, but a lot of times we know about those groups more than we know what's going on in the U.S. And there's a lot of great stuff. So we're learning about what people are doing here and sharing that information and building connections.
Perfect, perfect. Now we're going to go quickly to our guests. Just can you please introduce yourselves? And Reiner, we'll start with you.
Yeah, hi, I'm Reiner Jenss. I'm the president and founder of the Family Travel Association. And quite simply, we are a coalition of the industry's leading authorities on the subject of family travel. That includes everyone from suppliers such as cruise lines, resorts, tourist boards, tour operators, even travel agents, to the media, to family travel specialists, bloggers, journalists, even TV personalities. And we've all come together for one simple and powerful purpose, and that is to try to inspire more families to travel. Because we think the more children travel and see the world, the better off we will be as a
Are you guys there?
Species.
Yes.
Okay. And Michael, are you there?
Yep, it looks like Michael's there.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah.
We get your crystal ball.
He's a fortune teller.
So, yeah. So you can keep going, Reiner.
Yeah, so as I was saying, we are really a coalition, a membership group of the leading
Hello.
family travel.
Ron, are you there?
Michael, can you reboot your computer or something? We're not seeing you or really hearing you. Hey. There you are. 1 second. And unmute you.
There he is.
There he is, but he's been muted, and I can't unmute him. Oh, this is the best.
Maybe he muted himself.
Michael, can you unmute yourself? One day, all of this.
Okay.
Michael, there's a little.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, I had you guys. I lost a connection for about 2 minutes just as Rainier was introducing himself. So, would you like me to?
Can you introduce yourself quickly and your work?
We
Sure.
can cut.
Sure. My name is Michael Becker. I'm the CEO. Okay. Michael Becker. I'm the CEO of GeoSure Global. We rate city safety around the world. We're using predictive analytic technologies and big data. We've also got a crowdsourcing platform, and our goals are really to promote travel, to promote awareness, safety awareness, informed, smart, encouraged, engaged travel, both in the U.S. As well as abroad, and trying to deliver interesting, fun tools to users worldwide that can basically empower and engage and promote greater safety awareness.
Beautiful.
And that's an app. Global GeoSure.
Yes, it's an app, but we also have a web application product as well that it can be viewed in our website. The URL is geosureglobal.com.
Let's see. This page, you mean?
Right.
And what would we look at on this page?
So you would tap the button right at the top, just to the right and below the logo. It says "Get Global Safety Ratings and More." So that button right right there. Yeah, right. Just to the, yeah, there you go. It might take a moment to download and then allow your location, and then you can zoom in and out.
Okay.
Oh.
So, Mike, it assesses safety conditions and threats throughout the world?
Yes.
I'm sure there's a slew of factors involved. What are some of the primary factors?
A Rainer?
Yeah.
You all. Yes. Sorry. Say again. You cut out. Rainer,
You know, I was just curious. What are some of the primary factors that go into the analytics in terms of safety factors? Is it, you know, risk of disease? Is it, you know, what are some of the big ones, the primary factors?
Sure. Thank you. Yeah. So basically, what we're looking at is safety across 6 categories. We call it super granular because we rate overall safety, physical harm, theft, basic freedoms, which is political, disease and medical, and women's safety. And what we do is look at a lot of aggregated data and analysis from all over the world, traditional sources such as the WHO, the UN, the State Department, Interpol, crime stats from everywhere, you know, very traditional sources that everyone is familiar with, as well as some more esoteric type data sets and sources that people may not really think about carefully, but really have an impact on how we rate various categories. We look at income levels, we look at political regimes, things like inflation rates, the price of staples in certain countries. There's all kinds of data that we aggregate, and then we provide statistical modeling to come up with essentially a value or a number or a rating. We're really trying to quantify and contextualize safety conditions so people can have a very quick, fast, and easy understanding from 1 to 100 a location. There's also crowdsourcing components so you can share your views. We're always looking for accurate, responsible insights on the safety conditions of locations all around the world. And all of this is displayed in by mobile, by iOS or Android, and as well the web application has a couple of different tool sets. But we're trying to contextualize safety by quantifying it, and then we provide a bit of I guess you could say context around the context by providing narrative of what those numbers mean.
So I have a question, just what's there on the screen. Why should I use the GeoSure app if I have a friend that's coming to visit me in Minnesota and is worried? Why would I tell them to come to use that?
Sure. Well, you know, in a place that is familiar to friends or relatives or even tourists, you know, you're probably going to know. I mean, you're probably going to know that Minnesota is a pretty safe place. Now, there may be conditions that you want to share. There may be events that you want to share in either heavily trafficked areas such as Minneapolis or St. Paul, as well as areas where that are very, you know, less trafficked, and the information can be useful if an event happens to you, whether positive or not so positive. Any information that's really relevant to travelers with respect to safety, you can share that information. Now, there's also things, you know, we believe in responsible tourism. We believe in sustainable tourism. We're trying to promote tourism, especially to economies and regions that need it most. Minnesota is probably a little bit of a different location, but to the extent that there's safety information that anyone would like to share, we're always looking for those accurate, honest insights that may relate to the local travel economy, that can help encourage safety awareness, and so it could be interesting for someone. It's really more valuable when you're going to places that are less familiar. But then again, there may be non-U.S. visitors coming to Minnesota for the very first time. They may be concerned about events that they've read about in Asia or in the Middle East or in Africa about
or
the
a
U.S.
bridge falling down, right?
That's exactly right. And those events, which are all, well, I shouldn't say all, but for the most part, they're isolated events. They may be very comforted to know that there's not a lot of bad things happening in the state of Minnesota, right? Knock on wood. So it applies to people visiting the U.S. or Minnesota for the very first time, but it also applies to U.S. citizens and other citizens around the world going to places where they've not been, or maybe where they've traveled to quite regularly, but they see things that can provide information to be helpful for others through the crowdsourcing function.
So you've been, I guess there has been some question about, would GeoShore take away business from certain areas? And how would you address that? If there's an area that says it's been unfairly targeted or maybe fairly targeted with crime or something.
What we do is aggregate, as I mentioned before, a lot of different data, and the perception of individuals may be different than what our data says. But I'm really glad you brought this up, Deb, because the long-term vision is really the following. If we can harness the power of our tool sets and our crowdsourcing platform, and at scale, if we had millions of people around the world sharing their insights, right, which may be completely different from the numbers that we derive, then ultimately those reports, which are all aggregated and accounted for in our models, will reflect that understanding or that experience. So does that make sense? In other words, if you at scale, if you had a lot of different insights that would suggest something other than what our numbers suggest, well, then the values themselves will shift towards that number. So what we're doing is we're trying to aggregate a lot of individual users to get that level of understanding and granularity that may be different from statistics.
Hey, Michael, take a look at this page, or look at the screen.
Yes, I see it.
We can't see it.
So,
what is it?
How is it where you are now?
Yes.
So that's how you're collecting just general impressions?
No, that's really the Express. That's the Express page, Ron. There are two buttons in the app. One is an Express report and one is a detailed report. If you're on the fly and you just want to express sort of a go, green, a yellow caution, or a red, something bad has happened, and hit send, that's going to show up in the app. The detailed report screen enables you to type out a message. It enables you to drop in a timestamp. It enables you to drop in your exact GPS, even an image. So let's say you're in the Ponte Vecchio, right, and you or one of your friends has just been pickpocketed or something like that. You can share that information. The concept being that could be beneficial to someone in the area or someone else that may not know that area happened to have something that was untoward that took place.
Okay, that's just fantastic, and I want to continue this conversation with you online and do some sort of a web tour when we can see you, and when you can control like the web sharing. I'd like a guided tour. How does this work? It's
Sure.
a really cool concept and a really cool idea, but I want to get into depth with you on it. But I want to
absolutely.
But I want to hit Reiner and get Reiner into this conversation as soon as possible. Reiner, bring up anything you want. That's my question.
Well, Yeah, I mean, this is a Google chat and a forum for discussion and debate. So the Family Travel Association, what we're really all about, as I mentioned in the introduction, is inspiring families to travel and to travel more for those that do. For those that do, for example, expand their horizons perhaps beyond Disney, which many families feel is really the only possibility that they have when traveling with young children, although that couldn't be further from the truth. And I also want to preface that there's certainly nothing wrong with going to Disney. It's a rite of passage for most families. But one reason Disney has been so uber successful, and the reason it continues to be so popular with families, is because parents know it's safe, it's trusted. Parents probably more than any other demographic or market segment are probably the most concerned about safety and health, particularly when it comes to travel. Obviously, parents are really working hard almost every day to keep their children safe from all the perils that they have in their hometown, never mind when they hit the road to travel somewhere. So part of our mission and our goals as an organization is to make travel more accessible. And when it comes to a family, that means specifically, hey, let's try to alleviate a lot of the challenges that they have. So when you have children, obviously the complexity of a trip changes. Your concern over little ones, particularly the younger they are, the more challenges and issues you need to contend with. But again, one of those primary issues of concern for any parent, particularly when they're traveling, is safety. And the more that families hear about potential dangers or risks or pitfalls, we worry that they're going to be less likely or demotivated to travel. And again, nothing wrong with the confines and the security of Disney or cruise lines or all-inclusive resorts that have 24-hour guard protection. But I worry that all the negative coverage of whether it's Zika or hey, a 4-year-old falling into a gorilla enclosure at the Cincinnati Zoo is going to discourage families from traveling. And I think the app, for example, is a really terrific idea for informing the public on safety conditions around the United States or anywhere around the world. What I would worry, just as a not a contrarian, but as a counterpoint, is too much information. I don't want to say dangerous, but we all know that you hear of one incident of a child falling into a zoo enclosure, and the consequence of that might mean that suddenly hundreds, if not thousands, of parents decide not to go to the zoo because they think it's unsafe. So I don't want to underestimate or minimize safety and suggest that parents do not consider those things when traveling, but I worry that there's a hypersensitivity that is only elevated by not only negative news coverage, but any coverage at all or of safety risks, which are always out there, which are present, even in your house. So I just throw that out as a counterpoint to too much information can be discouraging when it comes to inspiring the traveling public.
Well, Ron, I don't know if you can hear me. I do agree that there can be in today's world, technology just inundates everyone with a lot of information. There can be too much information. Really, what we're advocating is safety, is sharing and reporting and trying to express safety conditions. And those conditions could be better than expected, positive events, as well as events that are not so positive. And so I think it's kind of a function of how much information you're enabling yourself to have, or your family. And again, it's sharing accurate views from the ground. As well as, I mean, at least from our respect, outside additional information from, from pretty well-known sources. So to me, it's about really understanding the conditions of safety anywhere. So, but I think you've got an very interesting.
Yeah, and please don't misinterpret my comments as suggesting that this is not a useful tool, or that ignorance is bliss and people shouldn't be informed. Far from it. So please don't take it as a criticism or critique in any way. But again, my concern, and not specific to your product, but just this kind of hyper, as you suggest, information age that we live in. Sometimes it just takes, one incident, whether it's a pickpocket, whether it's a 4-year-old falling into a zoo enclosure, whether it's being, contracting some kind of illness when you're outside of the home. These are of course all conditions that need to be considered. So I worry about the consequences that all this kind of negative has, because look at TripAdvisor, for example, that crowdsourcing reviews of primarily hotels and other services. One bad review can literally cost a hotel thousands of dollars and dozens, if not hundreds, of bookings. It's that kind of one negative report or story that suddenly freezes activity or whatever it might be to that particular area. So one thing that I try to emphasize quite a bit, particularly when it comes to families traveling with their children, is not only to take the precautions that they would normally take, but also just to be aware of safety in the overall context, that things aren't necessarily, when you travel, things may seem to be more dangerous because you're in unfamiliar places. And I think the biggest vulnerability that any traveler has, family or not, is the fact that they can be perceived as a tourist. If you're in a neighborhood, or not a neighborhood, but in an area where you clearly are not a local, that is going to make you more susceptible to potential crime or assault or whatever.
Right, but
it might be.
I hate to interrupt, but I just want to say something that I had talked about this with Michael a few months ago, is the fact that they have information specifically for women travelers. It's, I think, really important. I have traveled a lot around the world by myself to places where sometimes I got myself into a little bit of problems, and I know other women that won't travel alone. There's more and more that will, but having information about safety, I think, is really important for women travelers traveling alone. Just to be able to know, well, here's some great places to go, stay away from this food. I noticed that on the family travel website, you also have information about healthy foods and Zika virus and, just kind of preventative things too. But I think all of this information is really helpful to travelers, whether they're in the U.S. or traveling, abroad. And my neighborhood, for example, is a really nice neighborhood in St. Paul, Minnesota, and there's very little crime here. But just a quarter of a mile away is a major artery that has some very big box stores on it. I'm sure you probably know which ones I'm talking about. There's a lot of crime that goes on there, and most of it is like petty theft stuff. But if you look at a regular tourist or regular crime map, you will see that there's a lot of crime in my neighborhood, which isn't true, So I kind of like the fact that it is kind of hyper local.
Right. Well, Deborah, thanks very much for that. We believe that we did not see any tools that were specifically dedicated to women's safety from a quantification factor to the level of granularity, and we thought that might be not only a differentiator but also very helpful for women. I did just want to make a quick comment on Rainer's response. Rainer, you really hit the nail on the head, because you're absolutely right. The perception may be different than the reality, and although we can't really do much about unless we turn off social media, we turn off technology, you've got to sort of hit that button yourself. But to the extent that those misperceptions have negatively influenced travel and tourism, it's very important. What we've really tried to create is a tool and a platform for individuals and organizations to share what they believe and what they're seeing on the ground. And those insights can be a lot different than what you're seeing from abroad. So a good example of that is when Zika was hitting the media heavily earlier this year. Travel and tourism in the Caribbean and parts of Brazil, as we all know, got hit. And there was a quote from a general manager of a hotel in the Caribbean, I believe it was Puerto Rico, their hotel and a lot of hotels in the area had tourism down 15 to 20, in some cases 25%. And what he said was, look, the local perception here is a lot different. When viewed from the U.S. or the outside world, everyone gets really frightened. And so, that's exactly the point. What we're trying to do, if scaled, those perceptions could be reflected in the app and shared with a global travel community to say, essentially, hey, things are different than what you may be reading. They're not quite as bad as what you may hear and see about. And that can be multiplied by countries and tourism destinations all over the world. Yeah, there have been bad things that have happened in Turkey, in Kenya, and South Africa, but by reflecting viewpoints from individuals on the ground, which may be a lot different from what the media perceptions or media is reflecting, you can have a huge disparity. So we're really trying to give people a voice and a better understanding, real time, from individuals on the ground. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just grab the screen for a second, and I'm going to ask you to wind down this conversation, but I pose to you to answer at your leisure these questions that we've developed for everyone. What safety concerns do you have when traveling to unfamiliar places? Do you rely on different apps when traveling at home or abroad? What online communities exist to share travel experiences and safety information? And my favorite question, Michael asked, how many audience participants have traveled somewhere which is considered risky, only to have discovered they met wonderful people and had a great experience? Love that. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks. That's really what we're trying to do, is encourage and promote and help sustain global travel.
If I may, very quickly, and this is a fascinating conversation, and I could see this going in lots of different ways. But I think what we all know here, particularly I think in the audience, is that there really are two types of travelers, and that are tourists, quote unquote, and kind of the mass market tourism market, and travelers. I and many that I associate with are travelers in the sense that we go off the beaten path and we like to discover and explore new and interesting places and be a bit more adventurous in the way we explore the world. And then again, you've got much more of the mass market, which follows more of the tourism track, if you will. The cruise lines, as I mentioned, the tour operators, following kind of more beaten path, if you will. And I think what you find there is that for these communities and for the travel communities, that this information, particularly for the solo female travelers, for family travelers who, again, expand beyond the confines of your typical recreational family travel products, this information does become key and very useful, and I think there's a great service there. And again, I think that information is king, and this is wonderful. the flip side, when you have the tourism market, think about how your average mass consumer market behaves, and it's fascinating to see that suddenly in the wake of the Paris attacks, you have a mass cancellation of trips to Paris. Yet New York, which is in my backyard, I'd still consider one of the in terms of terrorism, is still one of the hot spots in the globe. Tourism is booming. And again, this is we're talking mass market here, and just the incredible sensitivities that the mass market has to any perceived safety risk, and how immediate and fleeting that could be. So this information and the thing we brought up before about too much information and its impact can have a very positive influence on a certain subset of travelers, and perhaps a very negative influence on another more mass subset of travelers, if that makes sense.
Beautiful.
Sure.
Yes,
Deborah,
but I think, well, I'm just looking again at the Family Travel Association's website, because there's a whole section on safety and travel, a lot of topics that they cover, from single parent travel, having emergency plans and preparing for what it would be like to travel with your child, to even breastfeeding. I was pretty amazed to see that on your website. And then some really cool things like extraordinary family vacations kids will actually truly enjoy, which is really great travel tips. But I see a lot of and things about how to stay healthy while traveling, and even some first aid kits. So I really appreciate this website and look forward to learning more about Family Travel Association. It's an industry association, or is it also for families that travel?
Yeah, it's thank you, Deborah. It is the Family Travel Association is a collection of industry members, and our collective efforts are all meant to better serve the consumer. So that's why you'll see stories and pieces on our website about health and safety while traveling on the road, insurance opportunities, things to help prepare families for those, again, a certain subset that are interested in going further afield, where insurance and safety risks are perhaps a little higher than some of your standard fare. But yeah, we want to make sure everyone is equipped with the information that they need and served to them by the authorities in the travel industry.
Hey, take a look at this page.
Thank you.
What should we be aware of on this page?
Well, there's two pages there. That's the Zika virus, and we wanted to have a story specific about Zika, and how that impacts not only family travels but travel in general, because it was having a big impact to parts of the world where we have members and where we know there's concern. Another one that you pointed to there was Ecuador relief. We have members of our association that provide travel opportunities and tours and have operations in Ecuador and other parts of South and Latin America. And we know that there are families out there who are passionate and interested in giving back and making sure some of these destinations get the help and support that they need, so that others can visit them in the future, because we know how important tourism is to the health and economic well-being for certain countries, and so we wanted to lend our support. So it's a resource portal, again, for families to get information and hopefully quite a bit of inspiration about things that they could be doing to enrich their children's lives.
Great. I know Michael has to. Michael, I just ask you one other question. We've heard a lot
Sure.
about the Global GeoShare app, but could you tell us a little bit about is it the Blue Planet Foundation, the other work that you do?
Thank you for that. Yeah, Blue Nomad. I forgot that we had a quick conversation about that, I think last year, Deb. Yeah. So I'm a passionate environmental advocate, and always trying to do things to help clean the earth as well as help support tourism economies and get people on the road and all of that. We formed a 501c3 about 2 years ago called Blue Nomad Foundation, which is essentially an organization that is trying to remove and do all it can to research removal of non-biodegradable materials in oceans and in our waters, such as plastic, and we're using algae research is a very interesting topic on how to apply research to actually remove the plastic particles. And thanks for mentioning that. I'd forgotten that you and I had that in common. So
I think it's really cool. Another part of your life, but yeah, very nice. So we're all very interesting, and I should also mention that Reiner has a history with the National Geographic as well. The National Geographic Kids magazine, isn't that right, Reiner?
Yeah, I worked with the National Geographic Society for 13 years, and yeah, my last full-time gig was with the kids publication, which I relaunched in 2003. So very proud of the fact that it is now the largest, most widely read publication for children around the world. So
wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
That's a huge deal.
But when you work,
you guys are incredibly passionate. Yeah, you're incredibly passionate about what you're doing, and I just think it's fantastic. I'm really glad that we all four got to connect, and you guys got to connect. There's a lot of overlap on what you're doing, and I, encourage you to stay in touch with us, and also let us know what you think we should be doing as far as our interviews and also connecting in the U.S. People that are doing responsible travel.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, folks, please stay online, and we're going to end the broadcast or webcast portion of this right now, but stay online just for a few more minutes, and we'll go through some of the procedural stuff. But thank you so much for your time. Viewers, thanks for watching this, and please share, and comments and questions are welcome. Thanks.
Be